What's going on, everybody? I'm Tyler Noe. He's Lance Barton. This is Always Talking Ball. The big question on everybody's mind last night in the first half was Nick Saban holding Alabama back? We're going to answer that question for you later. You know, on Mondays, we love to play a little guess the spread, but this is where we also break down everything that happened this past Saturday. And of course, we are going to kick it off with Alabama versus Georgia last night. We'll get to Lance's thoughts here in a second because I last heard from him at 8 p.m. Eastern last night and then again at about 11:15 Eastern. So he radio silent on me. He was locked into the game. But a couple things. Yeah, Alabama comes out with 41-34 victory. Kalen DeBoer now 13-2 versus top 25 teams and 5-1 versus top 10 teams. He did what we thought he would do, and he just wins. That's all he does, man. He wins games. Georgia makes it 9 out of 10, Alabama makes it 9 out of 10 against Georgia. That's the definition of being someone's daddy right there. Just owning that quote unquote rivalry. But man, we're going to talk about the first half. We're going to talk about that second half. And we're going to kind of look forward a little bit on what to expect from these teams going forward in the next couple weeks. Anything that worries us, and we're just kind of break this game down in depth here. But we're gonna kick it to Lance, and he is going to start us off with thoughts from a true Bammer here.
Well, first off, everybody got their money's worth with that game. You probably didn't think that at halftime, but I think that that was what you want to see as far as the overall game is concerned. When you get two heavyweights in the middle of the ring like that, the spectacle that Bryant Denny was last night, everything about that game was just strange game, ridiculous. But what a finish that we got. But first, you just have to say the game plan for Kalen DeBoer and that Alabama coaching staff was just incredible. Seriously, as good as it gets on both sides of the ball, but especially on the offensive side of the ball early on. The only text I did send you was like, again, very early in that game. Then I really did. I put my phone down, turned the phone over. I wasn't looking at Twitter, wasn't reading texts from anybody. I really just sat here with my family and just enjoyed it and enjoyed the game. And I never seen, I've watched just about every second of every Alabama game for as long as I can remember. And even during the Tua Tagovailoa years and Bryce Young years, I'd never seen an Alabama offense do the things that they were doing in that first half with the pre-snap motions and all of the eye candy. I mean, dude, they would line up and then the tight end and H-back and the running backs, receivers, everybody's moving. Everybody's moving together at different locations, and it's just, you can tell the Georgia defense was just so confused by it. They were running a lot of empty sets. Kirby Smart mentioned at halftime that he did not expect Alabama to be an empty as much as they were, and that they threw things at us that we honestly weren't expecting. We got to go make adjustments. So there in the first half, yeah, it was very obvious that Alabama's game plan is they felt like that. I mean, I saw that you tweeted it out actually about my comments that this was the fastest Alabama team that I had ever seen as far as just across the board, everybody, not just skill players. But yeah, that was very evident early on that they thought that they had an edge, no pun intended, of getting to the edge and getting to the perimeter. And Milroe was getting to the perimeter, running backs to the perimeter. They're running jet sweeps to wide receivers. They're getting the ball out quick to the receivers on the perimeter and just running rings around the Georgia defense there in the first half. And
yeah, either that's true that they are the fastest Alabama team you've seen, or like I said, Georgia just doesn't have the speed that they have typically had in the past. I mean, both can be true, but maybe Alabama was just so fast it was making Georgia look slow. But that was one thing I noticed. I mean, I even equated it, maybe not to quite a drastic measure, but to that Texas-Michigan game we watched, to where Texas just looked like they had way more speed than Michigan, and Alabama looked like they were just, like you said, running rings around Georgia.
Yep, and the Kirby Smart said it after the game. I talked about this before the game. The dual threat quarterbacks just give the Nick Saban defense which is the same defense that Georgia runs, the Georgia defense, Kirby Smart defense. And I'm not talking about quarterbacks that can just run. It's got to be borderline equally as good at throwing the football and running the football. And Kirby said after the game, everybody's like, what was your plan for Ryan Williams? And we'll get to him more here in a second. And he was like, there was no plan for him. How can I play? What do you plan for that guy?
Yeah.
Like, what can you do? And he said, double him? Sure, we'll double him. And then we'll allow Jalen Milroe to run for 300 yards. Because you can't double people on the outside because, like in his words, he goes, maybe the best tailback in the country is Jalen Milroe, who happens to be able to throw the ball really well from the quarterback position. And that's what it looked like. They could not defend the dual threat quarterback there in that first half. But the game plan, though, was incredible there on the offensive side. On the defensive side, boy, Kane Womack was not joking, DC for Alabama, when he said after the Wisconsin game and when they had the little coaches, because Kalen DeBoer allows the offensive and defensive coordinators to speak on Mondays as well at the team press conferences, Womack said, we haven't even scratched the surface.
Kirby said that at halftime. He said they're throwing some stuff at us that we haven't seen.
Yeah, exactly. And you get it when you have a new coaching staff. I mean, again, Nick Saban and Alabama, they just do what they do forever. But they had the same offensive system forever, just different offensive coordinators calling the system. The same defensive system for 17 years, whatever it was, just different people calling the defense. That was a completely different display of everything across the board that we'd seen for Alabama last night, and I'm sure that confused the fire out of Kirby in Georgia. Obviously it did. But hey, getting pressure on Carson Beck, he just is a different quarterback when you get pressure on him. And that's really any quarterback, though, especially pocket passers. And that was obviously the plan for Alabama, is they were able to get home with a lot of those pressures that they were dialing up, and he didn't have the time. And then, dude, did you see the look on his face in that first half?
Oh, yeah. He was seeing ghosts.
Yes, he was. He really was. So, well, again, we'll get to the second half in a minute. But in that first half, Beck was seeing ghosts. He tried to throw the ball to Alabama more times than, like, he threw multiple other, like, very interceptable balls that Bama didn't get their hands on. They did get their hands on them, but didn't pick it. But he ended up having 4 turnovers overall in the game, but I really counted as 5 because the safety in the end zone. I mean, I know that doesn't go down as a turnover. That's a turnover. That's what that is. You gave the ball right to the defense and gave them points in that spot. So, but now, what great coaches do and great teams do, Georgia showed it in this game. The adjustments that Georgia made at halftime, wow, remarkable. And Beck, for all the talk that people's going to talk about his turnovers, I've already seen people giving him crap on, X, and of course that's what everybody does. Somebody loses a game, everybody just acts like that team's dead or something. But for Beck in that atmosphere, from going from seeing ghosts to getting rocked over and over and over again, throwing picks, to the performance he had in that second half was incredible because he had to do it. It was weird seeing a Georgia team that they've got so far behind. He had to do it, but he was it. Like, he was the offense there in the second half. He had to do it. And as far as Alabama's defense just got gassed because they were on the field the whole second half.
I was going to say, I disagree with you there I'm sure they made some adjustments, but, and, I did see on the defense, they went to the edge a lot quicker when Milroe would try to run that, but we're going to have to talk about Alabama and their clock management.
Oh, yeah.
And then how in the second half, it seemed like when they would run the ball with the running backs, they would just run it right up the middle. And like we taled about, like, that's not what you do against Georgia. You just don't, you go to the edge.
Yeah.
And
Bama was trying to impose their will there in the second half. Instead of just so 2 things. Bama looked like they were trying to impose their will on offense, but not running clock.
Yeah.
If you're going to line up and try to impose your will and run the football down someone's throat, which, again, bold choice to try to do that against Georgia, there's just certain teams, I don't care who you are, you're not going to line up and just run the ball right at them and be successful. Obviously, Georgia and Kirby Smart's defense is one of those. Bama's defense is also one of those. Like, you're just not going to have success doing that. And for whatever reason, Alabama decided to try to do that. And on top of that, they were snapping the ball with 20-plus seconds on the play clock every play. If you're going to still run tempo and still snap the football with 20-plus seconds to go, then stay in attack mode. You can't do one of the – you got to be able to do one or the other. You got to stay in attack mode and keep going after them with like on tempo, or slow the game down and run the clock. They didn't do either. And I agree with you 1,000%. I did, again, when I picked my phone back up after the game, I saw a lot of people talking about it on social media. You and our boy Cole Frederick were texting about it too, that we've seen this before with Kalen DeBoer at Washington. Yeah. The most notable one was the latest one, obviously, was the game against Texas in the Sugar Bowl, where they jumped out to a lead, masterful game plan, looked like a coaching mismatch against Texas. Like it was like they were playing, they were doing different things. They were a different sport than what Texas was. And then in that second half, somehow you look up there in the fourth quarter and there's Texas with a chance, ball in hand, with a chance to win the game there at the end of the game.
Almost the same exact scenario, you know?
Yep, 100%. So
I mean, if this is his only flaw, I mean, that's okay, right? He still wins games somehow, but if that's his only flaw, I mean, hopefully he can get it fixed in the future and recognize it. And obviously being in Alabama, he's going to hear a lot more about it, I think, just from the football-loving people in the South versus, up at Washington. And it makes more headlines when you're in a nationally televised game like this.
Yep, and the game. So with the Alabama defense there in the second half, I saw a lot of people crushing the Bama defense. Again, y'all, it's Georgia, okay? It's Carson Beck, and I know the people like Georgia's weapons aren't as good. It's still Georgia. They've got really good players. There's a lot of defenses that Georgia offense would like the you-know-what up. But your job as a defense, think about this. When you're game planning and playing, when your job as a defense is to get them off the field on third down. You've got 3 downs to get them off the field. That whole second half, it almost was a curse that they got the lead like they did, because now they were having to defend Carson Beck and Georgia for 4 downs to get 10 yards. Over and over and over.
Every single one of them.
Exactly. Now, that's a problem, but still, they were like 25% more snaps against the Georgia offense is what they were having to defend. And their offense wasn't helping them at all in that second half, getting any first downs or anything. They're just going out there running tempo and 3 and out, punt. And Georgia.
Yeah, that's another reason you got to take some time off. Just give your defense a rest, especially when they've given up 15, 20 consecutive points.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And you could just tell there was no more pass rush because they were gassed. Don't blame them. They were just gassed. And Georgia was just in full sin mode. We're going to drop back and just throw shot plays. And so, again, the lead that Bama got, I think, was a curse. And hurt them. And I know that sounds strange, but it did. As far as Georgia just going in a completely different mode on offense because of how they had to play that there in the second half. But what was it, 28-0, and Bama scored 5 points the rest of the game until that huge play to Ron Williams. But overall, Georgia, when they took that lead, I have to admit, I was sitting there when it was like a 21-point game. I'm sitting there going, I just felt like it was coming. You could just feel it. And when Bama was driving, about to score again, and because Georgia was taking away the perimeter, Bama started throwing the ball to the tight end in the middle of the field, and it was open. And they hit it a few times. And then Milroe threw one. He was trying to keep the ball away from the safety that was coming down on the tight end, and he threw it just a little behind him on purpose. C.J. Dupree hits him in the hands. It was a kind of a tough play, but still, he would tell you he's got to make that play. Of course, it goes up in the air, and Georgia ends up picking it. If that doesn't happen, Bama probably goes in and scores, and the game's over. But that kept Georgia in the game. And when they took that lead, I have to admit, I wasn't feeling too good about the chances. And then Milroe hits that shot to Ron Williams. Not all 5 stars are created equal, Tyler. One of my favorite sayings.
Did you know he's only 17?
Yeah, man, that's definitely a running joke now with everybody. But just remarkable that he goes up against the best, against Georgia. He was beating Malachi Starks, who's arguably him and Caleb Downs are the two best safeties in college football, and he was beating Malachi Starks in that game last night. It's just remarkable, dude.
When he caught that pass, and as soon as he landed, he pivoted like on the land, and then almost just like a slow motion pirouette spin move,
the Matrix,
and then turned on the jets down the sideline. It's like nobody touched him, and that was unbelievable.
It was, and what's even unbelievable too is Xavier Brown, who made the interception. He's also a true freshman. There were multiple freshmen last night for Alabama, true freshmen that were making, not just those two. There were others that were making big time plays down the stretch in that game. So, I mean, you got what you wanted with it. I know that Kirby and Georgia, I loved how honest Kirby was after the game in his post-game pressers. Some of the stuff he was saying, like I loved the one when they asked him, can you talk about like what the deal is, like 1-6 against Alabama, but you're this and this against everybody else. What's the problem with Alabama? And he's like, he just word vomited like, yeah, what do you think everybody else's record is against Alabama that has played them 6 times? He's like, I mean, yeah, like we got to figure it out, yeah. But like you're acting like this is like some horrible thing that they're a pretty good team with pretty good players.
It's just, I mean, it's the expectation is for Georgia to beat them. Like they've been favored 4 games in a row against Alabama and lost 3 of them. The whole DeBoer clock management, I think that's just going to be, you're going to win a lot of games with Caleb DeBoer, but you're also going to have just close games down to the wire, and you're going to look back on it being like, that game should not have been that close. Like you're up 28. Like honest to God, I believe if Saban was still the coach and they were up 28-0, a whole offensive philosophy is so much different with the Nick Saban team. Even though he had guys like Lane Kiffin and Sark and those guys, but he would have been on the headset just yelling at him and cursing him out, saying, "Slow the heck down." I've snapped the ball with 5 seconds left.
Dude, we watched it so many times. I can tell you this. I say we as fans watched it so many times. Bama get up on a big lead, except the Tua Tagovailoa years. Other than the Tua Tagovailoa years, since Nick Saban was at Alabama, they would just line up, take the air out of the ball, run left, run right, and play defense. If they scored any more, it was because the defense was setting them up for touchdowns, because the offense was having just to throw the ball every play, and Bama's picking them off, or they're sack fumbling, whatever. But yes, to your point, absolutely. But something that I've not seen one person mention this, that I think is pretty amazing if you really think about it. Because it seems like he's some super veteran coach, especially now that he's at Alabama. Dude, he's been a head coach in the Power 4, not like 2 years and 4 games. 2 years and 4 games, not even 3 years. He's a super young head coach. Like, I'm not saying he is young, but he is very young in his head coaching career in college football.
He's still 49, right?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, but like it's not like he's old.
Young.
Yeah, he's not like he's old, but like that's what we're talking about here. And people act like this guy's like a super veteran because yes, he has won so many games. We saw him in the national championship game last year. Everybody posts his record, what he is against Dan Lanning, Lincoln Riley, Steve Sarkisian, now Kirby Smart, all those great coaches, and how he just keeps winning. But the dude has been a head coach for 2 years and now 4 games. I would imagine, like you said, the clock management stuff is now majorly on the radar. I would imagine he'll get better at that, no question. But Alabama with a bunch of young, unproven, but talented coaches, young, unproven, talented players just beat the Georgia Bulldogs. So where do you see, now let's talk about this. Where do you see these two teams going? Because we said, I forgot to ask you on air the last time while I talked about it off the air, like what will be the narrative with this Georgia team after playing Kentucky, who, by the way, Kentucky just goes to Oxford, beats Ole Miss. But what would be the narrative surrounding this Georgia team that they struggled with Kentucky, bye week, and now they just lost to Alabama when they still have to play Tennessee, they still have to play Texas on the road, and they still have to play Ole Miss on the road? What do you think? What's the narrative right now with this Georgia team?
My narrative is that I don't think everyone's like, this isn't the last time we're going to watch these two teams play. And in my opinion, I would put a percentage on a rematch at like 25-30% that it would happen. And maybe I'm probably in the minority there because everyone just assumes like, oh, Georgia came back and they're going to be awesome. Like, they've still got to go to Texas. They still have to go to Ole Miss. We'll get to them in a second. I know they lost at home. They still got to play Tennessee at home. Okay. It's not going to be, they're already 0-1 in the conference. Okay. It's not going to be an easy path to the SEC championship game for them.
Mm-mm.
And so I don't think there's going to be a rematch in the SEC championship game. My rematch would come in the playoffs at some point. But again, like if you're talking about Georgia, again, with that schedule I just rattled off, you lose another one of those, maybe two more. I don't know if a Georgia, I mean, it depends on what else happens, but I don't know if a 9-3 Georgia makes it in. Again, they only dropped to 5 in the poll that shall not be named. So, they're not looking too down on them. I mean, the narrative would have been so different too if they're down 28-0 and then Bama ends up winning that game 42-14 or something like that, right? I mean, they would have dropped a lot more. So props to them for coming back. And you're right, Carson Beck had a rough game. In his defense, that first drive, he put a ball on a wide receiver's hands.
Arian Smith.
And I texted you kind of in jest a little bit about, this is eerily similar to that, Alabama Notre Dame national championship game where Everett Golson put a ball right on Tyler Eifert's hands, like first drive. He probably wouldn't have changed the outcome of the game, but would have made it a little momentum there. But you just don't know what that does. I don't think you talked about the Georgia playmakers. I wasn't impressed with them at all. You said the Alabama defense was gassed. The secondary was gassed. Dominic Lovett is pretty good, but I think he's their weapon. It's amazing how much they miss Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey.
It really is.
It is so noticeable.
Yep.
And
it is.
Everyone touted Oscar Delp, and I'm sure he's great, but didn't see much out of him last night. Dylan Bell made, obviously the go-ahead touchdown at the end. And Dominic Lovett was kind of like the main go-to guy. ETN wasn't able to get going, but by that time,
you're still far behind. They're not going to run the football.
Yeah. So I'm anxious to see what happens with Georgia. Alabama on their side, I think, they've got Missouri coming in a couple weeks. They obviously got to go to Tennessee before that on the third Saturday in October. That'll be a tough one for them. And if they're going to drop a game, it's probably going to be that one, I would think. I'm not at this point, I'm not too worried about at LSU from what we've seen at LSU.
That's just one of those. I know what you're saying. That's just one of those, though, that it just kind of throw out.
I get you.
Yeah, you throw out the stuff. But that's probably more me being a fan and actually being a part of that game matchup for so long that I know Alabama's had their successes in Baton Rouge, but still, that one to me is just another one of those. Just kind of throw it out.
That's fair. But I could see Alabama, if they drop to Tennessee at 11-1, they'll be in the SEC championship game. I guess if Tennessee and Texas go undefeated, maybe not. So, it's fascinating how this is all going to play out in this conference.
Yeah, and I'm not just trying to we're not trying to be we always give our true thoughts. I'm not just giving radio speak here, just trying to take an opposite side. I don't think much different of Georgia. The only thing I think different of Georgia, I really thought that the weapons that they had on offense was better and not as bad as what people were saying going into that game. I walked away from that game still not thinking they're as bad as what the narrative is currently, but they're not as good as what I had thought in my head. Overall, I do agree 1,000% that they do miss McConkey and Bowers a lot. And I'm just not – see, it's hard for me, man, to sit here and still say right now that Georgia couldn't win every game on their schedule going forward.
Well, they definitely could.
Yeah, they definitely can. And
I just don't think they will.
Yeah, I'm of the belief that they are. I got to see it, man. I got to see Texas go out and beat the Georgia Bulldogs. Maybe they will. Yeah. I said before the year that I didn't think it would happen. I got to see it with my own eyes to believe it. Haven't seen anything from Ole Miss yet that makes me think that they're going to go beat Georgia. And Georgia gets Tennessee in Athens. I know Tennessee's riding high right now, and we are extremely high on the Vols. But that's a different animal, playing the Dogs in Athens in that spot. So Georgia still got
I'm anxious to see, too, with Alabama on their play calling. if they get up in a big lead like that in a big game, either Missouri or Tennessee, whatever, to see if it's not, because I just feel like it got a little bit lazy in the second half.
Yeah.
And I think I texted you, and I'm a big believer in like, I want to see what teams do after like their script. And not everybody's like Sark, where he scripts 40 plays, which is just insane, half a game, which is what got them in trouble against DeBoer and Washington last year. Usually 15, 20 plays. And by that time, Alabama had a 21-point lead. So it's like, yeah, that's their script. And so after that, you just kind of roll with the punches and everything. And that game was just so wacky. Again, everybody's got their own thoughts on the game. I told you, Feinbaum said it was the best SEC game in the last 40 years. And I think he's crazy because
remember a lot of good ones.
It was the last 5 minutes of that game was probably the best SEC game in 40 years. But before that, it was a snoozer, man. Halftime, I was like, I might turn on this Penn State game on my main TV and put the Alabama game on. I mean, I didn't, thankfully, but I could think of, I've been to 3 SEC games that have been better than that. And I mean, shoot, the Alabama-Georgia game in 2012 and the SEC championship game was better than that.
Yeah.
So
there have been multiple Alabama-Georgia
game.
Multiple Alabama-Georgia games been better than that one. Yeah.
Still a heck of a game. Not taking anywhere. The atmosphere is great. The only crappy thing about the atmosphere was that dumb Dave Matthews song that they're trying to hype this game up with on the piano. And everybody likes Dave Matthews. I'm sorry. Get out of here.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the last thing I want to say, because we've got all over that. Isn't it amazing how, I mean, the offensive line, I know injuries against South Florida, but then Alabama's offensive line was, for the most part, flawless.
Hey, no sacks for Milroe. Didn't take a sack.
Exactly.
And that was his big issue last year, was taking sacks that weren't necessarily on the offensive line, but he held on the ball for too long. They got the ball out quick. He was decisive. He knew what to do. Again, excellent by Sheridan in the first half.
Last question for you. And these, I would have Milroe as number one in the Heisman voting right now. Is Ryan Williams in the top 4 or 5 right now?
Yeah. So we were going to talk about this later. Might as well talk about it now. I would have Milroe number 1. I would have Travis Hunter number 2. And I would have Ashton Jeanty number 3.
Yep.
Because if you didn't watch Boise, and we're not going to probably talk about Boise much tonight, but he put up 259 and 4 touchdowns against Washington State, and he's averaging over 10 yards per carry this season.
Dog, dude.
But the fourth figure that I used in our tweet today was Ryan Williams, and people are coming at, saying Jeremiah Smith is still better. And like, yeah, Jeremiah Smith might be better than Ryan Williams. He's also probably a year older.
Teams.
Yeah, he's probably a year older than Ryan Williams. Because did you know Ryan Williams is 17? So Jeremiah Smith gets Oregon in a couple of weeks, and so we'll know a lot more about Jeremiah Smith after that game. So we'll see if he can do it in the big games. I'm sure he can. I'm sure he's a great player. So it's fun to watch these guys, dude. We get these guys for 3 years in college.
Yeah, man.
And so that is
how much awesome. How much NIL money is Ryan Williams collecting?
I remember there was a time where you did not like Ryan Williams and you called him a diva. And so
I definitely did. No, let's rephrase this. I didn't dislike him. I was just so tired of his recruitment. And we didn't talk about it much in the offseason, but I think everybody is seeing, for those that are outside of the Alabama landscape that doesn't obviously follow Alabama recruiting, the most important player in the Nick Saban era and the recruiting era there were 2 players. Julio Jones in the very beginning of the Nick Saban tenure, because that brought in a different type of player that he needed to get that guy out of Mobile, Alabama. This was Kalen DeBoer's Julio Jones. He needed to get Ryan Williams. When Ryan Williams decommitted after Saban left, it was immediate that Kalen DeBoer went to work to try to get that guy to recommit back to Alabama. Thank God he did. Because, like Isaiah Bond left and went to Texas, people outside of Tuscaloosa freaked out. Nobody in Tuscaloosa freaked out because they had this cat named Ryan Williams coming in, even though he was a freshman, and he's even better than than advertised.
Yeah. So yeah, I think Heisman race should be fun. We might get a non-quarterback, but yeah, Jalen Milroe will have a lot to say about that.
Mm-hmm.
Guys like Nico will have still 2/3 of the season left, a lot of big games left for guys to shine in. But Milroe putting up almost 500 yards against Georgia was pretty darn impressive.
Yeah.
So, all right, We talked almost 30 minutes on that game.
He
We could
deserved
probably
it.
talk another 30.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Another ranked matchup. Notre Dame gets it done in South Bend, 31-24 over Louisville. Notre Dame fumbles the opening kickoff. Louisville scores a touchdown 3 plays later. After that, I mean, Notre Dame put an offensive onslaught on in the first quarter with 21 points. But, man, this offense is still just tough to watch. Do not let the 31 points in the box score deceive you. They had 11 first downs. They had 283 yards. Riley Leonard only passed for 163 yards. Again, we talked about Louisville stopping the run in this game, and they did for the most part. I mean, they allowed Notre Dame to have 4 yards of carry. Both teams had a couple turnovers. I'm of the belief, you can correct me if I'm wrong, if Notre Dame had Tyler Shuck at quarterback, they would be much better off than if they had Riley Leonard.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree more. Just strange, man, that Leonard is just not any. I've heard people talking the other day like his ankle. Like you just thought this guy was going to be so much better than what he's turned out to be, and I don't know that. Do you think he can just drastically improve?
I don't know if he can drastically improve. I mean, thankfully for their schedule, their schedule's not, and they got a bye week this week. Then they get Stanford at home. They get Georgia Tech in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. They do have Navy and Army on the schedule this year, and everybody always knocks those games. Oh, you play Army and Navy, good luck, whatever. And I mean, both those teams are 4-0, and they're receiving votes in the polls, so they're not just doormats this year.
Yeah.
They've still got Florida State at home. They got Virginia at home, and then they have at USC. And so I don't know for the next couple weeks at least that he's going to need to do much.
Dude, that was one of those games where I walked away like I was wanting to see what Louisville was going to be like in a tough against a good defense, a good football team on the road like that. Because, again, no offense to the ACC, but there's a lot of teams that's just, other than a couple of teams, you don't really get to see somebody get tested like they should against really good football teams with a lot of talent that's well coached. And I walked away impressed with that Louisville bunch. Ja'Cory Brooks and Colin Lacey on the outside, we knew they were going to be a great duo. They are. Lacey's been getting healthy. He's only going to continue to get healthier. Tyler Shuck, I think, is only going to get better under Brom.
If he stays healthy.
If he stays healthy, right. Defensively, I mean, yeah, they still were fine. They were good. They weren't bad against Notre Dame. Like I said, the 31 points will deceive you, but that was not a conference loss for Louisville, and that just absolutely looks like a three-horse race in the ACC between Miami, Clemson, and Louisville. I think Louisville is in the thick of it in that conference, and they get Miami in Louisville here soon.
Yeah.
So, I walked away impressed with the Cardinal in that game.
Let's do a quick transition because there's really not much more to talk about the Notre Dame Louisville game. I mean, it is what it is, and Notre Dame covered, or they were favored by 6.5, 7. They won by 7 points. It really was just kind of just another game, but we had to talk about it because it was a top 15 matchup. Let's talk about some Friday night lights. I know you were locked in on this one too. You had some family in town. Miami, Virginia Tech.
Yep.
I didn't catch much of this game because effects from Hurricane Helene rolled through Indianapolis, and we were without power for 6 hours. And
Wild.
I didn't have much battery in my phone, but the last 5 minutes I was like, okay, I gotta watch this game on my phone, and if it drains my battery, it drains my battery. But Miami pulls it out, 38-34. I did watch the last 4 or 5 minutes, which as everybody will tell you on Twitter, was the most important time in that game. And the second play I saw was Cam Ward basically in the grasp, kind of gets out and then just kind of shovels it to a tight end who gets down to the goal line. Ward ends up, putting in for a touchdown to go up 38-34. And then Virginia Tech got the ball, and then we all know what happened after that.
Yeah, isn't it amazing, dude, what a quarterback can do for you? Cam Ward I know Miami's got better. They're better on the offensive line. They're better. They've got overall just more dudes across the team. But what makes this team different is Cam Ward. That was the type of game that Miami loses. That just was. That was the game that we see Miami lose year after year. Virginia Tech, not as good as Miami, happened to show up because those two teams, as someone who knows a lot about Virginia Tech football and the history of Virginia Tech football, as a fan of the Hokies, that has been a bitter Like, I know it doesn't get considered in there with the big rivals, but that was a Big East slobber knocker forever. And it always has been in the ACC and the ACC Coastal. When those two teams play each other, Virginia Tech shows up for a fight against Miami, and they did that Friday night. And that's the type of game that Miami loses, and they didn't. And the reason why, Cam Ward. I know Cam Ward threw a couple picks, but still, they are not even remotely close to in that football game if it wasn't for Ward. He made some just ridiculous throws, him escaping the pocket, making plays in the run game, making that shovel pass deal, like you said. I was like Johnny Manziel-esque or something with that play. But just a heartbreaker, man, for Virginia Tech. Dude, they've now lost 3 games at just the 1 in overtime against, I think, 2 in overtime. Did they lose in overtime to Rutgers as well?
No,
In the regular,
I know
it
it was
doesn't
a
matter.
3-point game.
Yeah, it was the very end of the game. They're this close from being 5-0, but instead they're 2-3. And Brent Pry is now 1-9, 1-10, whatever, in one-score games. And you could see why in that game. The clock management at the end of that game, pathetic, awful, terrible. Some of the play calls down the stretch and some of the things they were doing were definitely head scratchers. Overall, what I've talked about. I'll say this about my own team: good football teams find ways to win. Well-coached teams find ways to win. Bad football teams and poorly coached teams find ways to lose. Virginia Tech continues to find ways to lose. They deserve better than that. They didn't get it. And I know everybody wants to talk about the last play of the game. I went back and forth on it, but I think you were spot on with it from the very beginning. You talked about the Green Bay Packers, Seattle Seahawks deal in the NFL that happened. I took a step back from it a little bit, and I agree with you 1,000%. They got the call wrong on the field originally. And so that put them in a bind with the overturn. I thought, removing bias, I thought it was originally incomplete. Like, my original thought was it was incomplete. I also think they got the call right. At the end of the day, it's about getting the call right or wrong. What's the right call? I think they got the call right. But by the stupid rules and the law, the land, and all this goofy stuff they've got in football with the replay and 100% indisputable, whatever. I don't know how you can say that was 100% indisputable, but I know that's opinion. But still, I thought it was an incomplete pass. I just did. I don't know how you could look at that play and say, was that complete? So
I don't know if we didn't hear the explanation on the field because it got so loud when they announced it was incomplete, but they did come out and they said that the Miami player touched the ball as he was laying out of bounds.
Yeah.
And therefore, right then in that second,
dead.
It's a dead play. And so I guess that's all you have to do now is just touch the ball if you're out of bounds and dead play, even if a guy has got a firm catch. I'm with you. Like I said, I don't believe it was a catch on the field. I don't know how you could possibly look at that scrum and then by the time those referees ran in there and we're looking at, the scrum and the ball was loose by that time. I don't know how they could say, yeah, I think I caught that. And so looking back on it, yeah, like they probably made the right call at the end.
Let me ask you this real quick. Do you think if that game is in Blacksburg, Virginia, if that's calls that they make the same call?
Yeah, see, I don't maybe. I mean, I don't know what these referees are being told in the command centers.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist, but that was
I am being a conspiracy theorist.
Here, look, I firmly believe. My dad came over the next day, obviously a big Hokie fan as well. And I mean, I think he agreed. It didn't look like a catch or anything like that, but by their rules, inconclusive, indisputable, 100%, all the language they use, there was nothing about that was 100%. So I don't know how you overturn it, but he said, I promise you, if that game's in Blacksburg, Virginia, that call's not made. And I agree. I do agree. I think if that was in Blacksburg, Virginia, they call that call on the field stands, whatever the verbiage they use, and game over. But in Miami, with the biggest playoff threat for the ACC, all that stuff, that wasn't going to happen. That's just the way I feel about it.
Yeah, Bud Elliott from Cover 3 had actually a pretty good idea. I don't know if you saw it, but he said just for end of games, you can't do it every play because it would take forever, but just for end of games, the referee should be allowed to just not call anything on the field and go to the monitor and see just what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like, again, I know why they have to call something on the field because it either needs to stand or be overturned. But if in an event like that, when you've almost got like the Seahawks and Packers, and you've got one guy holding his hands up and one guy saying incomplete, you just say, okay, we don't know what happened. We're going to go see. And then by that time, they would have went and seen on the replay, hey, nobody had the catch.
You
Like
think
was
anybody would have
pass.
blamed him with the official, would have gone to the microphone, turned his mic on, and said, everybody, just being honest, we have no damn clue. We don't have a damn clue. So we're going to go to the monitor and look. We're going to go get this call right. And at the end of the day, I do think they got the call right. The problem is those officials were kind of probably set up for it. It's rare that it happens, but they were in a situation for, what do you call? Yeah. And you look at it and it's kind of a judgment. That was not 100%. It was just a judgment. But I do agree with you. Miami player was touching it, laying out of bounds. I didn't see a thing on there that said that was definitely a catch. So I think they got the call right, which is inevitably what matters, and the Canes stay undefeated.
Yep, Canes going to Cal this week, where game day is going to be at. So that'll be a fun one late at night, 10:30 on ESPN. Then after that, they get a bye week, and then they go to Louisville, like we were talking about. Back half of their schedule gets a little tougher. All right, time to get to the top 12. We had a healthy, spirited debate this morning on some of our top 12 because it's starting to get to the time of year. This is probably where we started arguing last year. End of September, early October, teams, going to start, catching these L's, and you're going to have to figure out where to slot in one-loss teams. And our rankings are what our rankings are. We each do our individual, and then we come together and we average them out to get our consensus top 12. So I'll let you do the honors. Who's coming in at our number one team?
We have a new number one. That is Roll Tide, the Alabama Crimson Tide, baby. At number one. That felt good.
There's no bias here at all in this podcast, I promise.
Zero.
Because I did not have Alabama. I had Texas.
Yep, you did. And we talked about it. And again, you
called me stupid.
Yes, I thought your reasoning was stupid, but I told you that. I said, look, if you just think Texas is better, I can live with that.
I said, I don't know if they're better.
Okay.
That's why I basically put these teams 1A and 1B in my poll. And I don't know who's better right now.
Yeah.
We'll finally get a common opponent in a couple weeks when Texas takes on Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see, the same scenario at home. So we'll get to see kind of what Texas is really made of. Obviously before that they get the Red River. So I had Texas on my I'll tell everyone my reasoning. It was, I just think that the fact that I haven't seen a drop off from Texas since they went to their backup quarterback is very impressive. And I'm trying to put in, if Jalen Milroe, and this is how highly I think of Jalen Milroe, if he did not start for Alabama, granted against UL Monroe and Mississippi State, I'm sure they'd be fine. But I was thinking of like the schedule that Alabama's played because going by that. Would Alabama be the same team or would they be in trouble? And I think Alabama would be in huge trouble if they didn't have the threat of Jalen Milroe running the ball like that. And so again, it's a dumb reason we're splitting hairs on these teams. But yeah, Alabama comes in 1, Texas comes in 2.
Yeah, and my reasoning was just you just beat Georgia. Alabama just beat Georgia. That's obviously a better team than what Texas has beat. And overall from that as well, they did beat Wisconsin on the road at Wisconsin. They did beat South Florida. I'm not trying to say South Florida is some great team. I just think that those 3 teams are better than what Texas's 3 teams are. But I will openly admit as well, when you said, I don't know that they're better. I really don't. I don't know that Alabama's better than Texas. I don't know that either. But I'm giving the edge to Alabama because they just beat Georgia and they've beaten Wisconsin and South Florida. And to me, those are 3 better teams than what Texas has compiled together so far. This will play itself out here in a couple of weeks when Texas does play Georgia, whoever they're going to play going forward. But yeah, that's what we've got right now. And at number 3,
also,
go ahead.
If you guys are new to the podcast, Lance graduated from the University of Alabama. So
yeah, that's nothing to do with it at all. Yeah. But Tennessee comes in at number 3. They were on a bye week.
Yep.
Honestly, I think even the bye week I think got bullied by that Tennessee defensive line this week. So that's why they're at 3 because even on the bye week, the D line is dominating. And at number 4, they played a Power 4 football team, the Ohio State Buckeyes. Go into Sparty land and just take care of business. They do.
Yep.
Defensively, nasty, dominant. Causing turnovers, not giving up points, not giving up yards. And, dude, the one-handed snag by Jeremiah Smith on that that little one-handed snag that they showed.
Yeah.
What a freak, man.
Yeah.
And I know they're going to play better competition going forward, but that's still, like, Ohio State really hasn't played anybody, but that's impressive that they go on the road to Sparty and just handle them like they did.
Yeah, they get Iowa this week, and then obviously the big showdown out in Eugene that everyone's looking forward to on the 12th. But, yeah, I mean, I'm a big proponent of against the spread records, and so that's kind of what my rankings are. They're half power ratings, they're half, resume, they're half against the spread. I just kind of combine everything together. And Ohio State was favored in that game by 23, 24 points yesterday, and they won by 31.
Yeah.
And so you cover on the road, and that's no matter who you play, it's what Vegas thinks of you is what Vegas thinks of you. And Vegas has all those tall buildings for a reason. They usually get things right. And so, I just think it was an impressive win. Who we got at number 5?
Number 5, the best one-loss team in the country, Georgia.
Where would Georgia have been ranked had it been 42-14?
Ooh, good question.
Would they still have been the best one-loss team in the country?
Probably not.
Because you can't really put them behind our other one-loss team, Clemson.
No, that's probably about right. They would be right ahead of Clemson. They'd be sitting there around 8 or 9, probably about 9 or so. I know we're getting out of order here, but I got to ask this question because I want a little bit to defend myself on the that I come off as so biased with Alabama. Let me ask you this question: what do you think the world would be thinking if last night if Texas would have played Georgia and beat Georgia like Alabama just did? How would the world be acting about Texas?
Well, they'd probably still be number 1 in the AP poll, which they're not.
Yeah.
I mean,
let's just flip it. If Alabama went on the road and beat Michigan and same schedule, beating teams to death, and Texas would have beat Georgia like Alabama beat Georgia last night. I think my point being is that it's gotten to the point where Alabama's beaten Georgia so many times that it's like people almost aren't giving them the credit that is deserved to be there for that. And people can say I'm biased, whatever. Dude, it is ridiculous that I have to pull up on Twitter today, and I'm reading that actually there's people out there almost taking away the fact that Alabama just beat Georgia. That's wild to me, dude. A team that has won 8 zillion regular season games. Their weapons aren't that good, and their defense isn't as good anymore, blah, blah, blah. Get out of here with all of that. That blows my mind. Okay, that felt good to get that out.
They finally are playing someone out of the SEC East.
Yeah, they are. They are. It don't matter really who they're playing. They beat everybody that they played, not named Alabama, since 2020. And that's just remarkable to me that we can't wait to discount somebody's win, no matter who it is. And that's why I just think it's just mind-boggling to me because I think if you flip-flop that, if that game was played in Austin, Texas last night and Texas beats Georgia in the same situation and you just flip-flop the resumes, people would be blowing their loads over the Texas Longhorns right now because of that same situation. And just because Alabama's beaten Georgia 9 out of 10 times, it's just like, I don't know, man. Move on. I'm going to keep going, dude. I'm getting fired up.
The woe is me. The woe is me from the Alabama fans, and the underdog role that they're trying to play still is unbelievable.
Hey, little old underdog Bama, baby. Little old underdog Bama. Nick Saban's gone, and all those players are gone, and the Tide just ain't as good anymore. I know. Get mad at me, dude.
We all knew this was coming.
We did.
We all knew this was coming.
We did. Where are we at in the rankings?
We got to go to number 6.
You want to get mad at me so bad right now? You can't stand it. Penn State, number 6. Beat a ranked team. Beat the Illini. Old Burt Bielema showed up to Happy Valley, put up a fight. But, again, Penn State won on the road in Morgantown. impressively. They beat a ranked team in Illinois, that Illinois team that went on the road and beat Nebraska.
And Illinois is still ranked, so even after that loss last night.
Yeah, again, I walked away from that game. Did you not? Did you walk away from that game kind of like, again, I was like, dang, I mean, night game in Happy Valley?
It was 7-7 midway through the third. I mean, Illinois has got a tough squad. They just, they weren't the most talented team on the field, and typically the most talented team wins out.
Yeah.
You lose the turnover battle, have a couple missed field goals. It's just, that it is what it is.
Yeah, I agree. And we've got, this was one, these two teams were the ones that we were it was another one that we were like, but we gave the nod to Penn State. Miami, number 7.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really their fault, I guess, that Florida ends up being just kind of the laughing stock right now of Power 4 college football, that they just go into the swamp and obliterate the Gators, and people acting like that's not even really a good win anymore. Maybe it's not, but that's what they did. But they did struggle against a very average, what it looks like, Virginia Tech team. So the fact that Penn State beat Illinois and they won on the road at Morgantown very convincingly, we gave the nod to Penn State over Miami. So Penn State 6, Miami 7.
Yeah, Virginia Tech's got to win 7 in a row now for us to cash that win total over. So that's not looking great. But Miami, though, they lost the turnover battle and they still won the game. And to me, sometimes that's what you need to do. I don't know if you watched Maryland yesterday, but Indiana lost that turnover battle 4-0, and they still won that game by 14 points. And that's the sign to me of a really good team.
Sigs, baby. Kirk Signetti. Hey, we'll just go again. This is our podcast. Do what we want. It's amazing how much better of a football coach he is, and a lot of coaches that are at really, really big time Power 4 programs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know which one's going to do it. I hope they don't. I hope he stays at Indiana and turns Indiana into a juggernaut. That would be sick. But if you're one of these programs, big time Power 4 programs that are struggling a little bit right now, and you want to turn your football team around immediately, there's your guy. As he said, Google him. He just wins, baby.
Yeah.
Number 8.
5-0, ranked 23.
Yep. Number 8, Oregon. They just, they did their thing against UCLA. That could have been much worse. I actually stayed up because I was so wired after the game that happened before that. I actually stayed up and caught a good bit of it. Oregon was about to absolutely blow that thing out of the water at the end of the first half, and right on the last play of the first half, Oregon's about to go in and score, and I don't know what Dylan Gabriel was doing, just falling away, stared down the receiver, and just made an awful, awful pass and threw it right in the hands of an Oregon transfer that transferred to UCLA, and he ran it back 99 yards for a touchdown to end the first half. That was about to be about a 30-something point game at the end of the first half, and instead it's a low 20s, and Oregon just came out in the second half and just they took the foot off the gas and pretty much did what they wanted, is to cruise to a win in the Rose Bowl against UCLA. Give them number 9 for them.
Number 9 is the Clemson Tigers, 40-14 over Stanford last night. The offense just continues to roll, and they've got the Seminoles on deck down in Tallahassee, so it should be a good one, but not really much else to say about Clemson other than, Cade Klubnik's got it rolling, Garrett Riley's got it rolling, and defense is still playing well. So, thought it looks like a solid team.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, man, when you look at that they really didn't run the football really well overall. They're scoring on explosive plays, which is something we haven't seen in a while. So the Garrett Riley experience is working right now, and Klubnik is playing really well at the quarterback position.
Yep.
Go and give him this next one, because this is where people are going to be like, wait a minute. Who do you have at 10, and who do you not have in front of them? But I'm with you. I will stand with you like Jon Snow in the Battle of the Bastards in that deal there in Game of Thrones. It was just Jon Snow with the sword, but I'll stand there with you side by side with my sword in hand for this one as well, and kind of pun intended with the sword in hand with this team that we've got here.
Yeah, number 10, the USC Trojans.
Yep.
Weren't expecting that, were you? So, again, they were struggling a little bit with Wisconsin yesterday. Something clicked. They turned it on, ended up covering the game. So prayers to you Wisconsin backers out there who had the +14 or +15.
Yeah.
But they won that game by 17. And yeah, we haven't said Michigan yet. And basically, it's mostly my fault. I've got them ranked so low, but I don't think Michigan's a good team. Again, we're going to talk about them here in a second, their game against Minnesota. But again, I said it last week. I think USC would beat Michigan more times than not. And I think I would just give the nod to USC there.
Yeah, I know this isn't a power rating, but at some point here, as you get down the list, like 10 through 12 for me was almost impossible to try to figure out who we're going to rank here. And I think you could even talk to a lot of Michigan fans, and they would tell you that they're not very good. Every power rating and all of that, which is strange because Michigan's always so heavily power rated. All the power rankings have Michigan way lower than what I've got them. But I get it for the people out there that the game played on the field, Michigan won the game. But whatever. I'm with you at USC at 10. I have no problem with them being at 10.
And then just by averages, it averaged out to 11.5. BYU comes in at number 11, 5-0. They won that game on the road against Baylor as underdogs. They almost blew a 21-point lead, but Baylor, was being picked by a lot of people out there.
Yep.
It was a nice spot for them to win that game, and BYU just came out and basically crushed that from the very beginning. And they were up 21, ended up winning 34-28. They played during the day, so this myth of them being the Vampires may be debunked, but they probably still play well at night. Again, they got that win. They got the win over Kansas State.
At SMU?
At SMU, exactly. So, and SMU, they might not be a bad team either, because we looked at them losing to BYU in week 2 or 3 and be like, shoot, shouldn't have lost that game at home. Well, BYU is a pretty dang good football team. So SMU still may be a pretty good football team. And then at number 12, we got Ole Miss. Oof. Ole Miss just at home yesterday, 17, 18-point favorites against Kentucky. Mark Stoops did exactly what we said he was going to do on the road as an underdog, slow the game down. It's going to go under the total. Ole Miss started off 7-0 right away. And then after that, it just looked like Ole Miss did not want to be playing the game. And what I always tell you, road teams at noon kickoffs, they always start off well. And you just got to watch it. It's 11 a.m. kickoff in Oxford, sleepy Saturday morning. Coming in, those guys know they're favored by 17 or 18. And that's a tough one for Ole Miss, because with their schedule, if you drop another one, say you drop one to Georgia, you're 10-2 with a home loss to Kentucky like that.
You're
no
probably
SEC
not getting
championship game. Yeah, it's probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not going to be in the cards for them to get in. That's going to be a huge letdown, and that's going to be a unsuccessful season in Rebels fans' eyes. And
absolutely,
you might see Lane Kiffin dart off to Gainesville.
Here we go. No, I'm with you. If they go 10-2 as of right now, we don't know who they're going to be paired up against. If they were to even go, if they're losing to Kentucky at home, who's to say they're going to win in Baton Rouge or places like that? But defensively, Ole Miss played fine. I expected way more out of Ole Miss offensively. They did not handle the physicality of Kentucky well at all. They just did not. And Ole Miss's offense was one person, Trey Harris. That was it. Nobody else. They didn't run the football at all. If you want to go take a look at it in the box scores, there's nobody else on the entire offense that did a dang thing worth a piss other than Trey Harris. So that's really the story. They did not handle the Kentucky physicality well. And I don't know what got into Mark Stoops in his own territory on 4th and 7, 4th and 8, or whatever like that, taking a shot down the sideline like he did. But for all the people that says he coaches scared, which we have said that many times, I guess he got tired of it and said, to heck with it. Let's just go full send. And he throws a jump ball down the sidelines and end up getting a first down on it, and they go down the field and reward him and score at the end of that game. But yeah, as far as Ole Miss down the stretch, that was brutal, man. That loss, that just can't happen. Can't happen.
Yeah. So that's our top 12. We're going to recap. Alabama 1, Texas 2, Tennessee 3, Ohio State 4. Number 5 is Georgia, 6 Penn State, 7 Miami, 8 Oregon, 9 Clemson, 10 USC, 11 BYU, 12 Ole Miss. A couple teams that are knocking on the door. Obviously, Mizzou just gets kicked out for having a bye week, and we didn't think they were that impressive to begin with. Notre Dame with their strong win is coming back. Indiana knocking on the door. We talked about them 5-0. LSU, Kansas State, Michigan, they're all kind of hanging around there. But we got to talk about a couple teams and a couple games. One of those crazy ones, Oklahoma, Auburn.
One of those
I
crazy.
know that was one you had on.
When you say the word crazy in a crazy game, just though you already know who we're going to be talking about. Auburn.
Yeah. I mean, Crane was a little early, talking about the Four Loco stuff. That was a Four Loco game right there.
It was right there with it. Dude, I mean, I've been witnessing it for years. It just remarkable year after year how they are just, I don't get it. I don't understand it. How almost every game, you can never say that Auburn's boring. If you're just sitting around, don't want to know what game to watch at a certain time slot, just turn on the Auburn game and you won't be bored. And 21-10 in the fourth quarter, late, like midway through the fourth quarter. And then they just another back-breaking turnover on that pick six. Auburn's defense played really well throughout that game. They managed to not turn the football over. Peyton Thorne actually hit a few like shot plays down the field as well. And 21-10, I was an idiot and gave out Auburn at +2 in that game. Felt really good about it, up 21-10. Even had some buddies that were texting me going like, I can't believe you backed us, but you were right, blah, blah, blah. And that's the kiss of death again. Before the game's over, a lot of football left to be played. But yeah, pick six.
I tried to reverse jinx it. And when they're down 7-0, I was like, I can't believe I wasted money on that. And I had a money line. I was feeling really good. I had a money line. And to make matters worse, I had under 46.5, which 21-10, midway through the fourth, you're like, this is great. Even 24-21, Oklahoma's up. Okay, at least I'll hit the under, right? And yeah, the rest is history.
Yeah, that just the only thing right now for Hugh Freeze is the incoming recruiting class.
Yeah.
At this point, he better do whatever it takes to keep that intact. Because again, I've got a lot of friends that are Auburn fans, and that's the pulse, and they're a collection of the pulse of the fan base of that program. Everybody, the only thing they're talking about at this point is that recruiting class. As far as good, anything positive, is the recruiting class coming in. Signing day hadn't got here yet. If he can somehow manage to get those guys actually inked on paper and signed, I think people will not forget, but will borderline forgive because knowing what's coming in. But he better hold on to those guys, because if not, things going to get weird quick there for old brother Hugh.
Yep. One game I watched pretty closely at noon was Michigan, Minnesota. Michigan did their thing. They jumped out to a 21-0 lead in the first quarter. And props to Alex Orji. I mean, he threw for 86 yards. He almost tripled his yardage from last week. So that's a really, really solid output from Alex Orji. 10 for 18, 1 interception, 1 touchdown. But the big story was the defense allowing Minnesota to come back in the fourth quarter, put up 21 points. And, I mean, just getting bullied. Michigan is getting bullied out there. Outgained 296 to 241. A couple turnovers did Minnesota in. They get down to an onside kick, and they actually recover it. And if you guys go back and watch the replay, they called offsides on Minnesota, and it was bang, bang. It was ticky-tack. Nobody's surprised that Michigan got a call here. But, yeah, it's 27-24 to escape a victory like that. Again, not inspiring any confidence in anybody backing Michigan or anybody thinking Michigan's a good team, let alone a top 10 team like the AP poll wants to think, and they get to go on the road for the first time this coming Saturday.
I said this last week, and I'm going to continue to say it. Because of the style of play of Michigan, there's nobody on their schedule that you can say going into the game that they're going to be able to blow out. It's going to be close games, and I think the exact verbiage I use, even against teams like Minnesota, they're going to play close games because Minnesota's got a good defense themselves. Michigan's offense isn't going to score enough points to be able to stretch leads out. Their defense is going to have to score a bunch of points. Pick sixes, sack fumbles, return for touchdowns, or punt returns, kick return, non-offensive touchdowns is how they're going to be able to stretch leads out against teams. There's nobody that they're going to play that they're going to be able to just blow out because of their style of play. And that happened yesterday against Minnesota. But
Yep.
interesting, man. They're on the road at Washington, the rematch of the national championship game. Anybody wants to see how, from one year to the next, how things change, just look at those two teams. There's Washington losing on the road to Rutgers, and Michigan in a dogfight with Minnesota on their home field in the Big House.
Yep. We'll get to the game here in a second and guess the spread. So one more game I want to touch on, Arkansas A&M at Jerry World. A&M wins 21-17. How in the world does Arkansas keep losing these games where they outgain the opponent? I'll tell you why. 3 turnovers to 0. Taylor Green again.
Taylor Green experience.
You live and die by him. He's going to make some great plays, and he's going to throw some picks and fumble the ball. And that's exactly what happened. Again, this is another team, kind of like Virginia Tech. They very well could be 5-0.
Yep.
But A&M gets the win, and A&M's 2-0 in SEC play, which is all that matters. And so you don't foresee that continuing. But, so one thing we need to revisit here, maybe on our next episode when we talk about, some preseason predictions is do we still think that A&M will beat Texas at the end of the year like we so boldly proclaimed?
Right now it doesn't look that way, but I'll remind everybody the Auburn against Alabama and the Iron Bowl games, how much better. Yeah, there's a lot of games like that we could go on in these big rivalry games where but yeah, do I think right now do I think A&M could, if both teams show up and play? No. Yeah. I don't feel good about that at all right now.
Yeah. All right. Time to play a little guess spread. This is the part of the show where I give you next week's games for week 6, and Lance tries to guess what he thinks will be the spread or what he thinks Vegas is going to make the spread, kind of a combination of both. I gave out some early bets last week. It was 3-2 on those games. I've got 3 I'm ready to give out again. So I'm trying to get ahead of some of these line moves. I don't know if I'm going to get ahead a lot here, but again, I say it every week, but what do I know? What do I know, right? It's Service Academy football.
You know the troops.
Yes. I'm not going to start with the troops, though. I'm going to start with a team that was in turmoil last week on social media, in the NIL world, in the conference realignment world, and I'm backing UNLV again. It's Friday Night Lights at home, and they've got Syracuse coming into town. And all UNLV did, without the so-called, front runner for the Davey O'Brien Award, Matthew Sluka, all they did without him was go out and beat Fresno State, 59-14?
We were on them.
With Haj Malik Williams at the quarterback position. Turns out they're just fine with that Matthew Sluka. And Matthew Sluka was watching that game last night I might have just screwed myself. So we'll see. But I'm backing UNLV again, -3.5 at home against Syracuse.
Going against your boy, Kyle McCord. Going against your boy, Fran Brown.
I know.
Okay.
I got the running Rebs are just too strong right now.
You like money. You just like money more than Kyle McCord and Fran Brown, I'm guessing.
I do.
Okay.
I do. And I wouldn't have picked them to win this game at the beginning of the season, but UNLV's rolling right now, and Barry Odom's got them rolling. They've already won 2 P4 games already, and they're favored. I mean, a G5 team is favored over a P4 team. That's almost like an unranked team being favored over a ranked team, right? I mean, you don't see that a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm backing UNLV -3.5. I'm also taking military under. Navy's playing Air Force this week. Total's 36.5. It's just like a rule that I live by. You have to take an under when the Service Academies are matching up with each other. I know Navy's offense.
Yeah.
I know Navy's offense is really good. Put up 56 against Memphis. Air Force let me down last night. Allowed 31 points against Wyoming, who's been terrible. But I'm going to have faith that the Service Academy under will hit again. So hopefully a 21-14 victory or something gets us there. And then, I'm back in Army again. Why in the world do they keep putting Army against teams like Temple and Tulsa as 10.5-point favorites? I don't understand. And I know they're on the road, but Army is a really good football team. And they're sound. Their defense is really good. Yep. They played Temple on Thursday night. Absolutely worked them. Won by 28. Same thing this week, but they play them on Saturday against Tulsa. And they're favored by 10.5 again. So I'm back in Army -10.5.
Don't blame me.
So we'll see where that line goes.
Yep. Dance with the one that brung you.
All right, so got maybe 10, 11 games here. Not as many as last week because it's, unfortunately, my week 6 is just kind of not living up to the standard right now as far as big weeks go. But we're going to start off with SMU at Louisville.
Louisville, 7.5.
Louisville minus 6.5.
Okay.
These are lines as of 5:30 p.m. Eastern on Sunday afternoon. So Louisville minus 6.5, pretty close there. How about this one? Missouri at Texas A&M.
I bet A&M's favored. A&M somewhere in like the 2.5 range.
He's on it today, folks. A&M minus 2.
Okay, yeah, that doesn't shock me. That's there.
Yeah.
Is A&M right? Oh, they're tied in the AP poll.
They're tied for 25th,
Okay.
and Missouri's 11th.
Yeah.
So again, that's almost, really close to like unranked team being favored over ranked team. And Missouri has not looked impressive. That'll be an interesting game to watch.
It will.
Auburn at Georgia.
Oof. Georgia 24.5. 24.5.
Georgia 23.5.
Okay.
So you can still get them under that 24. Ole Miss at South Carolina.
Was South Carolina on a bye too?
South Carolina was on a bye this week. One important caveat for this game is that it is a 3:30 kick. They played at LSU at noon. It was game day. It's still a 3:30 kick. They're still not showing South Carolina any love by giving them night kicks against these, really good contenders in the SEC. But nonetheless, 3:30, going to be a crazy atmosphere.
Yep.
Ole Miss at South Carolina.
Man, Ole Miss, the way that they looked against the physicality against Kentucky, that defensive front for South Carolina, whoo, it's a nasty bunch.
Yep.
I'll say Ole Miss, they're another one. They're going to be still power rated extremely high. 8.5, Ole Miss.
8.5, right on the dot.
Okay. I thought I was going to be off this week, but hey, you said you got 10 or 12, so that could be rough.
Yeah, we'll see.
We're on right now.
Virginia Tech at Stanford.
God. Dude. Virginia Tech.
I got to throw some in here that tries to throw them off.
This one definitely could. Dude, I don't know. Virginia Tech, 6.
Virginia Tech minus 5.
Okay.
Well done. I think I even saw 5.5 out there, so I'll give that one to you. Iowa at Ohio State.
Buckeyes, 20. It's at Ohio State?
Mm-hmm.
Buckeyes, 24.
Buckeyes minus 20.5. Under 3 touchdowns. So
I don't know how they're going to score, man. Against Ohio State, I just don't. That's not even making fun. I was better offensively this year. They are, but that's still like this is one of the best defenses in the country, maybe the best.
Yeah.
So,
all right, 5 more. Clemson at Florida State.
Man, this would have been one to take a look at before the year to see the difference in the game of the year lines before the year. I bet Clemson is. This will be one too. I bet people probably think Clemson's favored even more. But I bet you the Noles still get a little bit of respect at home. Clemson's 7.5.
Clemson 14.
Woo! Way off on that one. Okay. 14.
The pause you heard there, folks, was me just laughing. So.
Yeah. So I've only had 3 this year. I was 7 points off. There's one.
That might have been, that might have been close to the largest. So
yeah.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
All right. Tennessee at Arkansas.
Vols. 16. Tennessee. 16.
Tennessee minus 14.
Okay. I almost changed to 14.5. I don't know why I said 16. I was like 14. No, 16. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. UCF at Florida.
God. Talk about games that could be drunk. Florida. Gators favored. I'm going to say Gators. Gators 6.5. 7.
Florida -1.
You're serious.
I am dead serious. And we didn't even talk. We didn't talk this whole episode. I know we said we weren't going to talk about Colorado until they did something, and they did something yesterday. They went into Orlando in the bounce house and won 48-21.
The Shadur dropping dimes on
as 14-point dogs. The defense was great. I mean, Ted Roof. I don't know how he keeps getting jobs at the power forward level. We've got a friend who says that all the time, but. Yeah, I mean, but UCF apparently still getting their respect, and the Gators not in the eyes of Vegas, -1.
And Florida was off this week, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, should be interesting to watch.
God, do I have the guts to back Florida again?
All right, college game day. Miami at Cal.
No idea. Miami 17.
Miami -13.
Okay. Interesting.
And then the national championship rematch we talked about. Michigan is finally going on the road in the 6th week of the season. Michigan at Washington.
I bet Washington's favored. And I'm going to say, probably kind of like earlier, the whatever game that was, the A&M one. 2.5. 2.5. Washington 2.5.
It is Washington -2.
Okay.
I believe it opened up -1, -1.5 Michigan, and it quickly swung the other way, like very quickly. So Washington -2. There's another unranked team favored over a ranked team. Lots of spots for people to bet this week. It's going to be a fun betting week because, again, we say this every time when there's a week that doesn't look great and the schedule doesn't look great and crazy things always happen. And I mean, I didn't even mention your Tide going to face Diego Pavia, coming off that high against Georgia and favored by 24.5 points. So we'll see if Diego's got anything for the Tide. But, it's just crazy stuff like that happens where Bama might win that game 23-17 or something, just like on a sleepy Saturday. So
wait, what's the line? You said 24.5?
24.5.
I thought it'd be more. If you'd have asked me that, I'll tell you, I would have said 28.5.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, man. It's
even against Georgia, even coming off Georgia, that's interesting. Okay.
And that, again, I should tell you a little something. Vandy's starting to get some respect, and they've seen Diego do it a couple times already this year. And so we'll see, though. It's always college football never fails, never lets us down. Except for in the off season sometimes, but the games never let us down. They're always fun. They're always fun to talk about afterwards. We appreciate you guys tuning into us. I mean, we talked for a third of the time tonight about that awesome Alabama-Georgia game. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for following on social media. We just hit 1,000 followers on X, and that's big for us. We started this, 13 months ago?
Yep.
We got 1,000 followers. We got a great following. We love interacting on there. So go and follow us on there. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, all that. And we will be back on Wednesday. A little bit different show. We'll talk about a couple games, but since there's not many big games to talk about, we're going to revisit some of our preseason predictions, have a couple good arguments about some stuff and where we think things are at. Maybe see state of conference races and all that. Just kind of almost a third way through the season, kind of give you guys a lay of the land. So tune in with us next time on Thursday. We'll be back and we'll be better than ever. So appreciate it. Until next time.